You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And we are back after our special edition episode that ran for 2 weeks over the July 4th holiday. And thank you for all the heartening comments that you sent into my website. It really means a lot. Today, my guests are a terrific Norma Ray type union organizer working for women's rights and union rights for women and men in the hotel industry. And my other guest is the author of an eye-opening and history-revising book on how it was young female students who really integrated America's schools. But first, we have to go inside the headlines. Let's start abroad this week with 2 cases that demonstrate how differently courage is regarded while you're alive and after you're dead. Nasrin Sotoudeh, an internationally praised human rights lawyer in Iran who has focused on women's rights, is back in dreaded Irvin prison. Recently, she defended women arrested for pulling off their compulsory head coverings during public protests, as covered on this program. Iran's hardliners have been strengthened since Trump withdrew the U.S. from the 2015 multinational agreement that limited Iran's nuclear program and had lifted some sanctions. Like Nasrin Sotoudeh, Simone Weil suffered in her day. The French woman survived Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, but lost her whole family in other concentration camps during World War II. She went on to lead post-war national reconciliation efforts, and then she emphasized women's rights. She became a judge, then a trailblazing politician, famous and also much attacked for championing France's 1975 law legalizing abortion, which became known as the Veil Law. As health minister from 1993 to 95, she introduced measures to help women and to help HIV/AIDS patients. Following her death last year at age 89, millions of French citizens campaigned for her to receive the honor that now has been bestowed. Internment in the Pantheon, France's burial shrine for its most illustrious citizens, where there are now all of 5 women among 72 men. In 1992, Veil herself noted that the lack of women buried in the Pantheon amounted, quote, to a denial of what women have brought to France in the past, close quote. Someday, Iran will honor Nasrin Sotoudeh. Courage provokes attacks while you're alive, and honors once you're safely dead. You might remember the Spanish case we covered in which 5 men calling themselves the Wolf Pack were convicted of sexually assaulting an 18-year-old woman at the 2016 Pamplona bull running. The men recorded the assault on their phones and shared the video online. But the judge was so sympathetic to the accused that mass demonstrations across Spain sprang up demanding justice. Finally, the men were then sentenced to 9 years in jail. But they were released on bail late last month, pending appeal. One of the men, Alfonso Jesus Cabezuelo, had been suspended from the army, but he's now back on active duty. Mass protests again, women and men taking to the street with signs reading, "Down with patriarchal justice." The new leftist government has announced plans to tighten the law on sexual assault so that it will now mirror a recent Swedish law that any sexual act without explicit consent should be treated as rape. Women and male supporters have also been on the streets in Argentina since 2015, blending their Ni Una Menos, that means not one more, protests about femicide with women's health activists fighting to decriminalize abortion. Abortion has been illegal except in cases of rape or when the woman's life is endangered. But even those procedures have been difficult to obtain, and women who otherwise had abortions could be imprisoned for up to 4 years. The Chamber of Deputies, that's the lower house, in an unusual coalition of legislators from left through center-right, has, under pressure, finally passed a bill to allow women to get legal abortions after 14 weeks, and the bill has now advanced to the Senate. Further south, in a wanted and planned pregnancy, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, gave birth to her first child, a girl, and then confirmed that her partner, Clark Gayford, will become a full-time stay-at-home parent. I love saying those 5 words. The Prime Minister gave birth. Back in the USA, though, oh God. Trump, not content with attacking our allies abroad, has escalated his war on kids, both at home and abroad. He not only ordered separating babies from parents at the border for so long that under court-ordered reunion, children heartbreakingly don't recognize their own mothers. Now he has also escalated his war on babies. His delegates to the World Health Organization meeting tried to kill a simple resolution reaffirming long-standing scientific fact that breast milk is the healthiest option for infants, and that steps should be taken to minimize inaccurate marketing of substitutes. But U.S. companies like Abbott Laboratories, with its $70 billion formula and baby food market, are feeling the drop in sales, especially in underdeveloped countries. So the U.S. delegates threatened Ecuador, which was ready to introduce the non-controversial measure, with punishing trade measures and with a withdrawal of crucial military aid unless Ecuador dropped the measure. Nestle, the Swiss-based food giant, distanced itself from the threats, apparently remembering it had been the target of global women's movement protests for just such a position during the 1970s and 80s. The WHO was stunned, and eventually the measure did pass, thanks, oddly, to Russia. But Trumpist bullying clearly likes babies only in their fetal form. Tempting to go abroad again. Though if you intend to stay home and vote this November, stay tuned for fighting words at the end of this program. We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be right back with a guest who represents the union that makes life more dignified and safer for those invisible, mostly women, who clean your rooms in hotels and motels. That's coming right up.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Today, when unions and workers' rights, along with every other progressive idea and institution, are under assault by the Trump regime, we're going to hear from the other side. In New York and New Jersey, the workers represented by the New York Hotel and Motel Trades Council from the AFL-CIO, the workers represented by that union enjoy the best union contract for hotel workers in the world, guaranteeing excellent wages and benefits and working conditions and standards of fair treatment and standards of protection and safety for women workers, particularly those in housekeeping. Julia Rybak is the Director of Organizing at the New York Hotel and Motel Trades Council, and she's here with us today to talk about what they did in the wake of the Dominique Strauss-Kahn sexual assault against a woman from housekeeping in his room. Here's Julia Rybak. Julia, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Every time I have stayed in a hotel or a motel, I have thought about the women who make it function. Am I wrong in assuming that the majority of the membership of the Hotel and Motel Trades Council is female?
You know, it's about half and half,
Uh-huh.
but certainly the largest department is housekeeping, which is primarily women. So
Yes,
yeah.
that's what I was thinking of. But you
definitely.
also include banquet and dining room and room service and kitchen and steward and bar and mini bar and auditing and
Exactly.
concierge and laundry and valet and front desk. Okay. Yes.
Exactly.
So you got a huge constituency there. Tell us about HTC.
So HTC is the Union for Hotel and Gaming Workers in New York State and northern New Jersey. We have about 35,000 members, and I think you covered nearly all of our classifications outside of gaming. So,
oh, right.
Our members come from both all over the country, but also all over the world. 74 different first languages are spoken amongst our membership because most of our membership is based in New York City.
Wow. So immigration is an issue for HTC, along with unionism.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm proud to say that the contract language that we have for union hotel and gaming workers, the protections that we provide for immigrants are the best that I've seen, up into making the law as good as we possibly can. And what a more important time for it than right now.
No more important time. I just turned a page and realized that the list does go on. Exactly. Door services, health spas, security, carpentry, painting, upholstery, business centers, electrical, storeroom. I mean, you cover the waterfront. You literally. So union workers now, I understand, earn about 20% more than non-union workers in similar jobs. And that union premium has held steady since the 1930s. But it seems with the recent decision and the current, I refuse to call it administration, I call it regime.
Yeah.
Regime is my name for the Trump administration. So it's that recent court decision made a deep stab into unions, didn't it?
It definitely did. I mean, it's a giant shot at unions. And what I would say, first of all, is that in terms of in New York City, non-union work to union work, it can be almost 100% better for union workers today. And that's largely because there's been so many non-union hotels that have been built in the last decade. They used to have non-union wages closer to union wages to try to keep the union out. But now, because there are so many non-union hotels that have been built across the city, if they pay a non-union worker $15 an hour, union room attendant makes $30 an hour, over $30 an hour now, in fact, and that's without a pension, health benefits, dental, vision.
So let me ask a really naive question: how can they do that? Build non-union hotels?
New York has what's called as of right development, which largely means if you have money, you can build what you want where you want. There's very few zoning regulations in the city. And as the city, I think, has largely gotten safer and, business people and tourists are willing to go to parts of the city that not that long ago they wouldn't have, hotels are popping up, like mushrooms across the city.
I see.
And they can operate those non-union until the workers have the ability and the guts, frankly, to fight to be in the union.
To organize, I see. Well,
Yep.
I see. Oh, my God. Well, I bet I know which real estate developer was on the side of that.
Yeah, you might have a guess.
I might have a guess. Yeah, let's talk for a while about the chambermaids and the way that women are impacted, because that has been tragically but fortunately, if you know what I mean, at least made it to the news in the last years. There was the Dominique Strauss-Kahn assault of a woman hotel worker. Bring us up to speed on the harassment and assault front.
There's a bunch of work that is expected to kind of be invisible, like that of a room attendant, going into a room when you're not there, cleaning up after you. The other is that there's a lot of the industry that basically sells on sex, and so puts women in positions of, putting them in demeaning uniforms like cocktail waitresses and bartenders.
Yes.
With the Dominique Strauss-Kahn incident, what that really brought to light for us was how many of our members experienced far lesser degrees of assault and harassment and weren't reporting it to us. Our union has dealt with and addressed and fixed sexual harassment behavior problems amongst guests by having enough power to make the hotel get rid of people, you know, throw clients out. Because as you can imagine, when it comes to a hotel where they're charging $800 a night versus, you know, pleasing their room attendant, they would like to side with the repeat customer that's willing to pay $800, $900 a night. So with the union, we have the power to fight for these ladies and have been doing so since our existence. But after what happened with DSK, we're talking a lot more with our members. And what really was surprising to me was how many were experiencing incidents that they weren't reporting to us.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just like a problem of normalization, you know? And I think
it is. And of course it's general. The whole Me Too movement came out of that. I mean, we're raised not to report it, and we know or suspect, and most of the time we know that we're only just going to get punished for it. Either at best ignored, and at worst really we're going to suffer more for it. So
and that's one of the things I'm most proud of about what our organization did is we went and had rallies outside of the courthouse for the room attendant that brought that complaint, because she was getting destroyed in the press, as women so often are, you know?
Yep.
And we mobilized hundreds of room attendants just to support her and believe her. And that wasn't covered by anyone, you know, which is fine. But to do that, to have that solidarity for her as she was being personally attacked for reporting assault. That's I think an unseen powerful part of what unions can do for people.
No, that's very cool. That makes me, tear up. And it's sort of, that's Sally Fields standing on a table holding a card saying, union!
Exactly.
My own checkered past has me briefly as a union organizer in the publishing industry, attempting this in the publishing, which failed miserably, I must say, and wound me up in jail. But that's a whole other story. My heart is definitely with you. Talk about the panic button development.
Yes. So that came out of our conversations with our membership after the DSK incident. Our contract was then coming up and expiring in 2012. So this is 6 years ago. And we found out that there were just incidents of women, knocking on doors, saying housekeeping, knocking again, thinking they were going into an empty room, to discover that there was a man in there with his robe open. And that kind of thing was happening in numbers, and it wasn't being reported to us. And a lot of it is because of our members taking pride. I'm going to leave. I can put up with this. But between finding out about incidents like that and the DSK incident, which was much more severe, we fought for this language for the industry to have to provide panic buttons. And what that is it's a small device you can, wear on your wrist like a watch, or put with your hotel keys that, the card that opens the door, the master keys that the ladies carry.
Right.
And it allows for you to press a button that then security can locate you where that alarm is going off. And we actually proactively test this at, maybe a half a dozen hotels weekly on a rotating basis. These devices are incredibly expensive. And so even though this massive, international incident had happened, the hotel industry, we really had to fight with them to get them to pay for these devices. And I got to tell you, it is to talk with women and what they tell me about how different they feel about going into rooms by themselves, even if they've never had anything happen to them, just to know that if something did happen, they could press a button, just that feeling of safety and that feeling, frankly, of control and power.
Of course.
Is irreplaceable.
Do you get any actual numbers on how often that's used? Or do the hotels keep that a secret, or do the women tell you, or what?
A little bit of all of the above, frankly. And we've been trying to do more and more. We want more data on this, especially as the Me Too movement has come up. People are just asking us more questions. Obviously, the hotels are required to let us know when a panic button's been activated. And so, what we're doing is then tracking, was this a mistake? Was it accidentally triggered?
Right.
Which can happen. was there incidents. And the incidents, to be honest with you, have been rare, which is great. But we then are able to make the hotels remove a guest.
Oh, okay. I love it.
So, yeah. Yep. And so, I mean, it's just been incredible. And, now that we've gotten this contract language in our master contract, we've been able to, what the contract language says is that for anyone that goes into guest rooms, that they should be issued one of these devices. But one of the things that we've been able to do is get it for instance, a front desk agent who works the graveyard shift by herself, or cocktail servers at one of our casinos that we represent and have a contract at. And that, it's interesting because they've made slot machines so tall now that these cocktail waitresses are working on the floor, but largely unseen by the security guards and other staff. And there was an incident at one of the casinos where a high roller was drunk and, wanted another drink, and the cocktail server was refusing to serve him. Right. Also because, if you overserve, you can be disciplined, right?
Yes.
And he lunged at her and attacked her. She fought back a little bit, and the casino actually moved to fire her. And we won her case in arbitration. Not only did she win her job back, but she won it back with full back pay, which was, I think, around $17,000. This was a couple years ago, if I remember correctly. So from the time of when she was fired to the arbitration date, she won full back pay. And because she's a tipped worker, that meant double her hourly wage rate to make up for her missed tips.
Oh.
And we got them to agree to increase the number of security guards they had on the floor, and they issued panic buttons to all of the cocktail waitresses, and waiters. And honestly, that's I feel like one of the best examples about the importance of having a union, because once you have power over the industry, we were able to take something that contractually we really only had for room attendants and room service waiters, and apply it to another group of people that needed access to that.
Exactly. Oh,
did not contractually have it.
That's a wonderful story and a wonderful triumph. It's also very heartening because I think in this country, because a couple of unions, were corrupt decades and decades ago.
Right.
Unions have got I wouldn't say a bad rep, but a stained rep. Whereas to me, they still are shining examples of what should be, and yours is, and I congratulate you for it. And if somebody wanted to begin to unionize where they worked, and it was in the hotel industry, how would they find you?
Well, if they're in the New York City, New York State, and northern New Jersey area, they can go to our website, which is hotelworkers.org. And even if they were in a different city, we would help connect them to, an organization, a union in that area. But, definitely if anyone's in the New York area and the northern New Jersey area, they should reach out to us. Obviously confidential, and we teach people how to, win. How to organize in secret and then fight and win for a first contract.
I love the teaching people how to win. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Julia. Thanks for the work you folks do. And union, I'm not standing on a table, but I'm pretending to be Sally Field. And thanks for being with us today on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to have this time talking with you, Robin.
And now it's time to go into the surrealism corner. The Daily Beast reports that wealthy Russians are renting Trump's condos in Florida so they can give birth to children with U.S. citizenship. One so-called birth tourism company package, $84,700, includes a Trump Tower 2 apartment complete with gold bathtub and chauffeured Cadillac. I am not making this up. Female musicians of the New York Philharmonic have been rattling their chains and their cymbals in protest of the requirement that they still can't wear pants on stage. They must wear floor-length black skirts or gowns. The Philharmonic is alone among the country's 20 largest orchestras that forbids women to wear pants for evening concerts. 50 years ago, the Philharmonic had no full-time women, and now it has 44 women and 50 men. The Philharmonic's president and CEO is a woman, Deborah Borda, who at least is open to discussing updating the dress code. Yaha! This issue, as you might expect, is especially crucial to women in the cello, wind, and brass sections, who make a very strong case that skirts interfere with their ability to play comfortably. Look, that this is still an issue at all in 2018 is off-key. The 1944 classic movie Gaslight, starring Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer and directed by George Cukor, is set in the 19th century when they had gas lights in the home. It's about a husband who surreptitiously turns the gas lights up and down so that his heiress wife thinks she's losing her mind. Then he can commit her and get her money. The film was so popular that the title entered common usage, as in to gaslight somebody to make them think they were going bananas. Now, unless they're into classic movies, younger people may never have heard the term, but it's making a comeback in a new form. Women have been calling help hotlines and domestic violence shelters, saying they feel as if they're going crazy. One turned on her air conditioner but said it switched off without her touching it. Another said the code numbers of her front door's digital lock changed every day and she didn't know why. Another told an abuse helpline she kept hearing the doorbell ring but nobody was there. These stories are part of a pattern in domestic abuse cases newly tied to smart home technology, to internet-connected locks, speakers, cameras, lights, and thermostats, etc. These are marketed as conveniences, but are now being weaponized for use in harassment, revenge, and control. Abusers use apps on their smartphones, literally remote control, to manipulate such devices, to watch, to listen, or to terrorize. No groups or individuals appear to be tracking such use in domestic abuse because the technology is relatively new. The gadgets can be disabled through reset buttons and changing a home's Wi-Fi password, but device makers claim that making it easier to switch controls on an account can also make access to the systems easier for criminal hackers. Such gadgets are largely installed by men, and many women don't have all the apps on their phones. Emergency responders say most victims of smart home-enabled abuse are female, and many express confusion or ignorance about how the technology works, how to change it, how to remove their husbands or partners from the accounts. Furthermore, when a victim uninstalls such devices, this can escalate the conflict and can trigger enhanced violence. The National Domestic Violence Hotline advises everyone in the home using smart home technology to learn how it works, and domestic violence counselors are pushing for restraining orders to include this kind of technology stalking and threat. So is it any better abroad? Not so much, but at least it's funnier. In Italy, sexual harassment apparently is only a problem for young women. So say Italian prosecutors who dropped a sexual harassment case against Carlo Tavecchio, the former leader of the powerful Italian Soccer Federation. They concluded that Elisabetta Cortani, the 53-year-old president of the Lazio Soccer Club, who has claimed that he groped her, was too old to be distressed by his advances. I am not making this one up either. Meanwhile, Ireland, doubtless still giddy with joy over its recent progressive pro-abortion rights referendum, is now considering stripping the blasphemy clause, Article 40, from the Constitution. It looks like voters will be given a chance to also jettison another provision of the 1937 Constitution, which suggests that a woman's place is in the home. Ireland has changed. Stripping off the straitjacket of the Roman Catholic Church, women are out in the world, and Irish blasphemers face little chance of punishment now, although the blasphemy prohibition still does have a corresponding law and a fine of almost $30,000 on the books. The referendum will take place in October. The Irish are really into this referendum thing. And here's a lovely one from Collyton, a town in southwest England. It's a laundry revolt. Claire Mountjoy received an unsigned letter claiming to speak on behalf of all local businesses and the neighborhood and asking her to use a dryer or hang her wash indoors and not in her yard, so that, quote, we can all be proud of our town, close quote. Hurt and offended that no one had come by to sit over a cup of tea and discuss this openly with her, Claire Mountjoy posted the snooty anonymous letter on social media. It backfired. Neighbors, business people, and virtually the whole town came to her defense and began draping their clothes outside. A bra on top of the flagpole, boxers, socks, shirts draped outside homes and shops, on fences, even strung across the street. The town, in Devon, has a reputation for resistance. In 1685, it sided with the Duke of Monmouth against the newly crowned King James II. And now some residents are calling for an annual underwear airing Rebellion Day. Now that story is lovingly surreal. We have to take another brief break. I'm Robin Morgan. This is Women's Media Center Live. And do you know who the courageous civil rights champions were who really integrated America's schools? They were little girls and young women. And my next guest coming up is the woman who wrote a book about it.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again. My next guest, Rachel Devlin, is a prize-winning author and scholar and an associate professor of history at Rutgers University, specializing in the cultural politics of girlhood, sexuality, and race in the post-war United States. She's the author of Relative Intimacy, Fathers, Adolescent Daughters, and Post-War American Culture, that came out in 2005. And in her most recent book that she's going to talk with us about today, A Girl Stands at the Door, The Generation of Young Women Who Desegregated America's Schools, which came out this year, 2018, she writes about the girls and teenagers and young women who became the public faces of desegregation years before Brown versus Board of Education, the deciding decision from the then Supreme Court. Here is Rachel Devlin. Rachel, welcome to the program.
Great to be here. Thank you.
The book, A Girl Stands at the Door, The Generation of Young Women Who Desegregated America's Schools, is eye-opening. And I thought I knew the history of desegregation, and boy, did I not know it. You have unearthed a whole patch of buried history. I mean, I think when most people think of desegregation, of course they think of Brown versus Board of Education, and they think of dramatic things like James Meredith integrating Ole Miss. But there were these generations of little girls who courageously, I mean, it's an amazing book. How did you come to write this?
You know, it was an accident, and my first book was on white girlhood in the 1950s, but I wanted to compare that to black girlhood. So I just started looking through bound volumes. At that time, you just went to the library and got a bound volume of magazines. And I was looking through Ebony, and all of the school desegregation stories were about girls and young women. So I thought, you know, whether it was college, or even grade school. And I thought, wow, there are a lot more cases going on than we realized, but they're all about girls. And I thought, is this editorial bias, or does this reflect a reality that we don't know about? So armed with just, a sense of that things might be different, I went to the Library of Congress and started combing through the records of the NAACP. And what I found was that there was just enormous amounts of activity on segregated schools and on unequal schools right after World War II, and stretching all the way to Brown, across the South, but also the Midwest. Parents were filing both equalization suits, like suits demanding that schools be separate but equal, and then a smaller group, but very activist and very determined, were filing school desegregation suits. There are about a dozen school desegregation suits from rural Texas all the way up to Washington, D.C., all save one of them was filed on behalf of a girl or young woman. So I had to step back and think about, why girls? Why were girls doing this work?
And what did you find? I would assume, of course, that it was because they were perceived as being less threatening than boys.
One cannot escape that assumption. But as I went along, I found two things. First of all, girls were very good at this work. They needed to speak to hostile white adults, and they needed to speak to the press. And the press didn't really want to speak to the parents. They wanted to speak to the girl plaintiffs. They were very curious. Do you really think you're going to go to school with white students? Do you think you'll make friends with white girls? And so these plaintiffs were asked socially explosive questions. And they managed. Go ahead.
And they were babies. I mean, they were little girls, for God's sake.
Yes, junior high students for the most part. There were some high school age girls. There was one in Virginia who just tried to walk into a white school herself, and when she was rejected, filed a lawsuit with her mother, but she had gone by herself to try to enroll in a white school.
Incredible. What guts.
Yeah, no, amazing. And to desegregate a school and to file a lawsuit and to talk to the press, you have to have two things. First thing you have to have is courage, which all civil rights work requires. But the other thing you have to have is social dexterity. And girls tended to have that kind of social dexterity. They were very good on their feet. And
have to be.
And so I started. They had to be. So when I interviewed them, they all recalled these profound moments where they were confronted by white adults or lawyers or reporters, and they all recall these moments where they had to speak, or what some of them called speak back to an adult, which was in the 1940s.
Wow.
Very difficult to do.
Yeah.
So they had to be self-possessed, diplomatic, polite, but also unyielding and determined. So somewhat contradictory, seemingly contradictory attributes. But what I found was that girls were able to do this because they were so schooled in exactly this kind of interaction. So diplomacy, poise, self-possession, and that they got these talents, these skills, because of the nature of their everyday lives, which is they lived in a world where insult and sexual harassment was an omnipresent aspect of their lived experience. Whether on the streets of southern cities, even police officers would harass them on the streets, or in the white homes where they worked at very young ages, from the man of the house or his sons. And girls were schooled in how to deal with this kind of harassment, which really is what they would go through when they desegregated the schools.
Survival,
exactly. And the way that their parents, their ministers, social workers, their aunts, their old, everyone in their lives schooled them in being composed, self-possessed, sort of reconnoitering.
reconnoitering from people who have more power than them.
Exactly. And so how to be firm and self-possessed with these people, but also, communicate with them, because they had no choice but to communicate with white adults. And they became very good at it.
Tell some of the individual stories, because I find them riveting.
So in 1947, Marguerite Carr attempted to walk into Elliott Junior High, the middle school closest to her home, and the principal met her on the steps. He wouldn't even let her into the school. She couldn't walk through that door, and this was true all over where girls tried to walk into white schools. Principals would come out and bar the door. The principal said to her, "You don't want to come to this school." And
God.
Marguerite Carr recalls smiling nicely. She said, "I was taught how to act in polite company," but then saying to him, "I do want to come to the school."
Oh.
So a fleeting moment, but incredibly radical. And it was such a radical act because no one at that time in this country had seen grade school students go to school together.
Right.
Almost nowhere was this in practice, even in states where segregation was prohibited.
Yeah.
And so it was so radical that the white students, pressed up against the windows to see what would happen. And all of the members of Marguerite Carr's middle school lined the sidewalk on the other side, teachers, students, janitors, the PTA, the school principal, just to see what would happen. So it was an enormous social responsibility to enact this attempt to walk into a white school.
Yeah. I mean, the courage, just amazing. I mean, I think most Americans don't think about, or don't know that Plessy versus Ferguson which was for segregation, separate but equal, that kind of crap, that lie, that was an 1896 law. I mean, and it remained in place, until 1954 and Brown. I mean, that's staggering. That's just incredible. And then Brown itself was ignored for so long. But before Brown, during Brown, and after Brown, it was little girls who breached the walls.
So Millicent Brown, her parents, she lives in Charleston. Her mother had been trying to enroll her in a white school since 1954. In the summer of 1963, her father said to her, "Put on your Sunday best. We're going to go to the school board." He didn't say why. He didn't say what was going to happen. And she got there, and she finds herself facing an all-white, all-male school board, about 12 men sitting around the table.
Oh.
And then they wanted to ask her a series of questions. They asked her, "Do you like your black school? Do you like your teachers? Do you like your extracurricular activities? Do you like your friends?" Yes, of course, she said to all the questions. And then they finished with what they thought would really shut her down. "Well, then why would you want to leave all that and go somewhere where you don't know anybody?"
Mm-hmm.
And she shot back, unprepared as she was, "Well, I make friends wherever I go."
Oh, what a precious child. God, you want to go back in time and just wrap her in your arms, don't you? I mean, but
she's so smart. What a smart thing. I was so artful of her.
Very artful and heroic and right on the spot a riposte. And I hope that their pale male jaws dropped to the floor. I mean,
she did. She checkmated the whole room. And a lawyer had gone in there with them, and she said she looked at him, and he just gave her the biggest smile. She knew then that she had won.
Oh, how fantastic.
And she did. She desegregated the high school in Charleston in 1963.
My God. Oh, Rachel, thank you for this book. It fills a gap in our knowledge and our education. I recommend it highly. And it's a whole chunk of history which female people need to claim, and which, in fact, also the black community needs to claim and the country needs to claim. A girl stands at the door. The generation of young women who desegregated America's schools. And we've been talking with Rachel Devlin. Thanks for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We have to take one last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll return shortly with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back to some fighting words. It's time to get practical. You might want to grab a pencil and some paper. We face serious threats to our free elections in the crucial contests for control of Congress this fall. The American election system is actually made up of 50 different state-run elections, each with its own unique voting process, and each state has several procedures potentially vulnerable to interference, both foreign and domestic. That is the bad news. But that same individualized arrangement is good news. Hackers and other disruptors have to devise 50 different means of doing their dirty work. In either event, we need to educate and protect ourselves, since the Trump regime has deliberately done nothing toward either. Generally speaking, if you can keep your registration and voting procedures solidly on paper, you're safer. But that's not possible once you've cast your vote. Journalist Shannon Vavra of Axios compiled a list of the potential points of failure, and with thanks to her, I share it here. Registration interfaces. When you enter your voter registration information online, any vulnerability on your own devices could expose that information to potential bad actors. Voter registration databases. Security measures like firewalls and physical network separation can protect these data troves, but no firewall is foolproof. Electronic poll books. E-poll books are the electronic version of the books of voter records that poll workers refer to on Election Day at voting locations. In some instances, e-poll books can send live updates back to the county or state offices using active network connections. If the security on those networks fails, the information could be exposed. Printed poll books. Some counties print their poll books using third-party printers that could expose this part of the process to the Internet if the third party has weak security protocols or other vulnerabilities. Voting machines. Hackers have demonstrated that they can break into any voting machine with wireless connectivity or with a USB port. Now, in theory, it would be difficult to exploit such vulnerabilities physically because somebody would likely notice this kind of tampering, but it's not that unusual for people to take their time in a voting booth, and election officials neither can nor should observe every move that voters make. Electronic vote tabulation. This can require data from electronic ballots to be transferred to an election management system, an EMS, and any of the methods used to do that, USB sticks, email, or other Internet transfer, can expose the data to tampering if not properly secured. Optical scan vote tabulation. Scanners often tabulate paper records of votes like a standardized test, but in some cases these scanners may be rented from third-party vendors, which means they might have been exposed to tampering or to bad security there. Election management systems. These systems, used in different locales to tabulate and store voting results, might be at risk of exposure to the Internet as well, depending on the jurisdiction's security protocols. Absence of paper trails. Most of these vulnerabilities are deepened by the lack of paper backups to electronic election systems. In 5 states, Louisiana, Georgia, South Carolina, New Jersey, and Delaware, there are no paper records of votes, and the paper record is spotty in 9 other states: Pennsylvania, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, and Mississippi. If you live in one of the above-mentioned 14 states, you should raise a bit of hell, and also you might consider voting via absentee paper ballot, although there's no guarantee that your ballot won't be scanned electronically after it arrives. And last, risks from human error, confusion, and doubt. These can add to the confusion in the context of other simultaneous efforts to undermine public trust in elections or to create chaos, and an adversary can still claim responsibility. This kind of tactic, which experts call a blended attack, can cause as much disruption and doubt as direct interference. What to do then? Well, warning, it's hard work. We cannot take our enfranchisement for granted anymore. For starters, you can find out more regarding the above-mentioned list. You want to know what systems are used for where you are and what, if any, are the paper trails for registration and for balloting, if third parties are contracted for voting machines, scanners, or electronic voting, and if so, what are their security guarantees. You want to find out about disability-accessible polling places, information about early voting and absentee voting, about registration and voting for military and civilians abroad, and about how to volunteer as a poll worker. Join or start a local group, divide up tasks, and start sleuthing. You have a right to ask what your local and state officials are doing to protect your vote. If the answers are not reassuring, organize. Start online petitions, campaign to attract press attention, and pester your mayors, governors, secretaries of state, legislators, and election officials. Despite White House inaction, some of those blessed bureaucrats who actually care about their work in government agencies are already on the case, as are many city, state, and national non-governmental groups. Here are a few resources for learning the current status of cyber threats and other election interference regarding your vote. The League of Women Voters, both the national office and branches in each state and in many cities, and your state board of elections, each of which can be found online, are good places to begin. The U.S. Election Assistance Commission, EAC.gov, sounds like a government body, but actually is independent and has information in multiple languages, including Cherokee, Dakota, Navajo, Tagalog, and Yupik. The Cyber Security Services Catalog for Election Infrastructure, put out by DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, has online information about operational, structural, and technical strengths and weaknesses. But I wouldn't trust DHS as your sole source. The Center for Democracy and Technology, however, is excellent, as is the Center for Internet Security, the Council of State Governments, and Defending Digital Democracy, D3P, at the Belfer Center at Harvard. These are all useful for info on electoral security in your state and city, and each one lists emails and phone numbers for officials. All states, and many cities as well, have their own voter guides. I urge you to spend an hour on your favorite search engine checking this out. It's also spine-stiffening to see how many specific constituencies are addressed. There are lots of Christian voter guides, anti-choice guides, and pro-gun guides, and guides with fetching names like voteundergod.com. But there are also voter guides from Planned Parenthood advocacy organizations across America, and guides focused on disabled citizens, on lesbian rights, on the elderly, on ethnic constituencies, on students, and so on. Our federal government should be actively supplying us with such information and supporting our right to enfranchisement rather than suppressing it and passively welcoming foreign interference in it. But that's not the case these days, so we need to do it for ourselves. Still, that can refresh the act of casting our votes. It can remind us that all women and that male citizens of color have been beaten, jailed, and killed to secure this right, rather than the reliable, dutiful, slightly boring obligation it has been for a tragically low percentage of Americans in the past. Voting is now an act of radical defiance. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes. You can also stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast at iTunes, at Stitcher, and at Google Play. Be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter, and you can check out my website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. My latest book, Dark Matter, New Poems, is available online and off wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. And I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.